world where the quality of information available to poorer communities is doctored, tainted and sometimes regressive, where the words fake news have come to mean other people's opinions, it is vital to rely on news platforms with journalists who have feet on the ground and can report the truth. New York Parrot, a New York-based national and global news outlet, is changing the narratives of media operations. We focus on the news that matters, like self-empowerment, entrepreneurship, finances, health, security, politics, and more. We strive to curb violence, racial and economic discrimination, and to promote peace and socio-economic development of multiculturally diverse world. As we give voice to the people, we also give your business a voice and make it heard. Get your product and services off the ground by advertising on our fast-growing platform. With so much of daily visits to New York Parrot, you can't afford to be invisible to prospective clients on the website they trust the most. Our posts reach millions of people across the New York State and around the world. Advertising on our news site will unlock an audience of thousands of potential customers on your doorstep. New York Parrot is born to prosperously speak tomorrow for the voiceless.
Hello, welcome to the Foreign Policy Review, a Parrot TV program. I'm back from assignment in my living room writing history. And today we have CARLO, PARCELLI, TOTH, and Billy Bob with us to discuss the very rapidly developing news of China and the U.S. So welcome, guys, to the show. I'm going to kick it off to Billy Bob and let him throw out some news stories we can discuss, and we'll banter back and forth for a while. How are you guys today, this morning?
Good.
Excellent.
Okay. Pretty good. Thank you very much, Dustin, for joining us today. We do miss you when you're gone. It's good to have you back. Yeah, all kinds of things going on this week. Our challenge will be to identify exactly which thing we want to talk about. So, China is always a great topic. I know. I think the CEO of TikTok was getting grilled. Was that this week that the CEO of TikTok was getting grilled? And that's like the cover story, right? That's the cover story for a whole bunch of censorship legislation that is being snuck in underneath the pretext of TikTok. So it seems that it's so broad in scope, this legislation. It's so broad, and it's definitely more than just TikTok, and it's going to allow them the ability to just cancel people, on a real much grander basis than they're already doing. If you're saying something that is, incompatible with the establishment narrative, the ruling class narrative. Are you guys familiar with that? Did you read any of the legislation? Did you see any of that? Those stories?
I have a glancing familiarity with it, but yes, he was a Singaporean guy, by the way, and one of the news anchors said, "Mr. China has entered the congressional room," which was, I think, funny for me, and he's become a star overnight because of the stupidity with which he was grilled. It was all about TikTok, and for people who don't know, TikTok is an American a brand, a European brand. It's banned in China. In China, you have Douyin, a totally separate platform, a separate thing, which has to obey Chinese law, just like any other social media or tech company has in the States, which is mild compared to what's being introduced in the US now, which is called the Restrict Act, which gives the executive, I think, unprecedented power over tech censorship. That's my glancing understanding of it, but the repercussions could be huge. A lot of free speech advocates says that there was nothing like this even back in the day during the Soviet or the McCarthy days. Like, this is serious business.
I think the legislation lists 5 different competitive nations, maybe more, including China, Russia, North Korea. And if they say that you're an agent of those countries, they can shut you down. But it's so broad that they don't even have to say that you're from one of those nations, and they can still shut you down. So it's dangerous. It's like the Patriot Act. It's misnamed. for like the Cleaner Skies Act, made the skies more dirty. The Patriot Act was anti-patriot, and the TikTok is going to be very broad, and it's not just going to be affecting that one platform at all.
Does
but
China's
I see that as a preparation. What's that, Dustin?
When China banned TikTok, did that have anything to do with fighting the kind of celebrity culture that they've been talking about the last few months? I've heard some stuff about China's like trying to fight this kind of an individualistic celebrity culture emerging that came
in China. In China, it's about the law. So basically, the limitations are as such. I think you can have 4 hours a day of social media if you're a kid. It's always social. It's always health oriented. And they said, okay, TikTok should obey Western European and European laws. So it was created as this separate brand from Douyin, which was the original. Douyin is the Chinese TikTok, where it's wholesome content. And then I love the fact that some senator or someone there said, why am I looking at something like trannies and homos on my TikTok feed? And this Singaporean guy says, well, it's an algorithmic thing, just like Facebook. You get a reflection of your interests and your society. Which is why in China it's all about athletics and dancing in the park. That was a fun little split.
Certainly culturally, TikTok is more tailored for an American audience than a more contemplative audience.
Yeah.
So countries like China, where people tend to be more contemplative and
communal.
I can locally confirm
on their existence and their life and that sort of thing. I know this Confucius is making a huge comeback peripherally in the news. And you look at the U.S., which is frivolous to the core. TikTok is perfect for it. I feel bad for the influencers who are making fantastic livings off of TikTok. It's their bread and butter. More power to them. They found an idiot culture, and they're
hugely popular.
They're mastering it. Yes.
And I can confirm that in local context, because I've seen a couple of friends with Hungarian TikToks, and it's at the level of fart jokes and people falling over and cute cats. That's pretty much the Hungarian TikTok landscape.
Yeah.
So it reflects the broader society.
It's easy to get fished
America,
in
it's
with
more
those
based
cat-
than that.
Yeah.
So what else is new in the news? If we can call it news.
Well, a whole lot.
Well, I know. Let me just toss it out and get it out of the way. Ukraine. Zelensky's going, look, if Bakhmut falls, we have to negotiate with the Russians. Well, what the fuck is he talking about? And I saw 2 public statements to that effect coming out of his mouth. Obviously, Bakhmut is going to fall. It's pretty much over. The towns to the south of Bakhmut that were shelling Donetsk city are now under heavy siege by the Russians. When they fall, and it so game over,
that was an interesting statement, because they're always trying to say, it's not that big of a deal, and so to hear him say that it's gonna necessitate negotiated settlement, and that's why we're killing all these tens of thousands of people. I was surprised to hear that, but Dima on Military Summary Channel, I think either yesterday or the day before, said, hey, it still could take weeks. He even said weeks or months is what he said for Bakhmut. So it's hard to tell with him, because he's a little bit all over the place sometimes. But
I wanted to say that too about Dima. Yeah.
It could happen quickly, but it might drag out for a little while still. But it's inevitable, like you said. It's totally inevitable. Like the entire conflict was inevitable from the very beginning.
Yes.
Russia has very short supply lines. They've got a lot of people at a big industrial base. Like, Ukraine's not going to win ever. It was never going to happen.
It's a done deal, and the Western mainstream is actually getting into this story now. Yep, Avtivka, Yoji knows.
Yeah,
my
thank
friend.
you. Thank you.
the Western media is getting to it's painful for them, but they're grasping this slowly. Like places like Wall Street Journal, WAPO, the CIA Central, like it's horrific losses. Probably the hundreds of thousands, the morgues, the hospitals are full. It's horrific. It all could have been avoided. But in the context of this Zelensky, it was an interview on a train to an AP journalist, I think, and I watched it. And just to go back a little, in January or February, someone said the tanks will arrive. If they arrive in July, is that too late? And Zelensky just said, yeah, that's too late. That gives you an idea. I don't know what people think who say this is going to drag on for years when they're out of ammo, they're out of useful trained personnel. They're probably sending their best in now. This is all from Western media. Basically, the game, the jig is up. And in this interview, it was disgusting to me that it was basically for PR, and he admitted that if Bakhmut falls, Putin is going to use this in Iran, in his society, and it might force us to negotiate. It might force my people to be upset with me, which they very much are.
Was that the interview on the train that he said that?
Yes, that one where he sounds more and more like Borat because he starts saying is good. I don't know if you noticed that. It was a bit funny if it weren't tragic. Yeah.
So what about the spring offensive? Ukrainian spring offensive.
What spring offensive? Yeah. Where from? With what people? With what material? Mm-hmm. You can ask Brian Beletic about that, or Scott Ritter, or Colonel Douglas McGregor. With what? Is it going to be little Poland? Is it Finland, fresh in the NATO? Are they going to do it with the population half the size of Moscow? Is it Britain in a complete economic collapse? Is it France where they can't pass retirement reform because people burn down Paris? Well, what is it going to? Is it going to be Germany where there is the on Monday a full-fledged transport strike, just bringing the country to a halt? Where is it going to come from? The US, they can't recruit. Their recruitment numbers are like 60% down. You probably know all this, but where is this counteroffensive going to come from?
I mean, it remains to be seen if they were able to compile a force. I mean, it's hard to know. There's everybody's giving their own analysis, but it's possible that these tanks, these Western weapons, they've developed some kind of a force, and everybody says they're going to try and head south, and
Zaporizhia was mentioned.
Zaporizhia, and then break up that land bridge. It would be their objective, but nobody thinks that they can really succeed in that. The question is, are they going to try and fail, or are they not even going to try? Because they know it's hard to know. It's hard to know.
They have to cut through 200 kilometers to get to.
Which has been defended with all kinds of trenches, the dragon teeth.
And they tried a probing offensive a few days ago, and the Russians just knocked it back on it. They just slaughtered the Ukrainians.
That was in Zaporizhia direction, I think.
Yeah, it was in Zaporizhia region, Yeah.
So,
who knows?
This is why I stay away from this frontline news. Dima does that best when he focuses just on the front line and the next couple of days. When it comes to more than that, like a month or 2 months or 3 months, I respect and love Dima. He's wrong 4 out of 5 times. That's just my experience with him.
As one of his listeners said, he should stick to reading maps. So.
Yes, he's really good at that. Good at that. But from what open sources tell me, everything that Ukraine has is being poured into Bakhmut in what is a national tragedy. The elderly, the kids.
Now I want to stress here that Putin has saved in Ukraine by initiating this special operation, has saved tens of thousands of lives.
It's the reality.
Because if you remember, what was going to happen is that the Ukrainians, led by just a whole slew of Nazi oriented military, were there were 80,000 of them on the line, on the Donbass line, ready to go in and slaughter, literally genocide the 2.5 million Russians remaining.
Yeah.
So since only 300 to 350, and I say that, I understand that's a large number, 350,000 people have died. It's better than the 2 million or so that would have died at the hands of the Nazis if the Russians hadn't done anything. And that's an important thing to remember, there's still many, many lives have been saved by what the Russians did.
So I agree with that,
Absolutely.
Carlo. I would say that the more likely result would have been an ethnic cleansing. You know, they would have just pushed everybody into Russia, and you would have had an ethnic cleansing, and they wouldn't have all been murdered, but I mean, many of them would have been undoubtedly. But I get what you're saying, but I don't mean to quibble with the.
But let me just add that last week we had Christopher Black on, and he said, when I made that statement, he said not only that, but they were planning on going into Russia itself.
They are saying this in captivity. There are videos on Telegram and Twitter channels that they captured some of these people and asked them, and they are very open about their ideology. Adolfo, the painter from Austria, he did things right. And what would you do with these lesser people in Ukraine, which is the Donbass, the Russians, the Hungarians in the West, and gas chamber? That was his little answer. This is so out in the open now. It's and
I hadn't
totally ignored in the West is what baffles me. Yeah. And in doing so, I think this is also an important point. It unified and basically awokened Russia, and it's a good thing for the world. And it's good. It also married it to China, basically married it to China. And this is wonderful news for anybody in the world, except for a few billionaires in the city of London and Wall Street.
So we can move on. I'm going to start buying my groceries in yuan. So when I go to the grocery store, I got a big wad of yuan stuff.
When it comes to the
Let me address. So last week I was beside myself trying to figure out what Russia's response was going to be to bringing in what is that called?
Depleted uranium.
Yes. So I couldn't figure out what could they possibly do. But, luckily people a little bit smarter than me are in charge in Russia. So they had a pretty good response. So I was pretty impressed with what they came up with. And the West doesn't seem to be happy with it, but they kind of brought it upon themselves. Essentially, it's the stationing of Russian, tactical nuclear weapons in Belarus. That's the response to using the depleted uranium, in the Ukraine combat zone.
And it's a wonderful one because Jens Stoltenberg, NATO, they're all panicking about this. They're screaming in indignity, even though they are US is stationing nukes in Germany, in Italy, the Netherlands. That's just inconvenient for them when Putin compares it. But it was also an answer. I don't know if you picked on this. Who's most upset about this? It's Poland. Because they have recently talked about, Greater Poland, the Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth, their little dreams, and that has been shattered. That has been shattered by these nukes. Sorry, not going to happen, and they are salty about it. It's more salt than the Soledar mine. So that was an answer to two things, and I thought it was a master move, as we'd expect.
It just demonstrates the hypocrisy when the West, cries foul about that move, and yet, they've been doing it for decades, placing their own weapons in, like you said, Eastern Europe and Western Europe.
Sticking with...
You guys are going to move on to...
I want to give another masterstroke, still sticking with the Ukraine situation, also in diplomacy. I don't know if you know this, when last weekend, Fumio Kishida appeared in Kiev, obviously on US order, and he had to leave very, very fast, to shake Zelensky's hand. But he had to move very, very fast because the Russian Air Force or the Ministry of Defense publicly showed live videos of strategic bombers just off Japan's coast. That's a warning shot. It was live feed saying, hey, look, that land, that's Japan. And Fumio had to get out real fast. So he was spooked. That is how Russia does these things. He flew out very, very fast. Beautiful moves. So right now, Zelensky, he's waiting. Please, he hasn't talked to Xi Jinping basically since the beginning of the SMO. He invited him to Kiev, where Xi Jinping is not going to be waiting for that phone to ring. And it's just not ringing. But they sent aid in the form of Legolas. What do you call it? The actor who plays Legolas. Orlando Bloom, wearing a UNICEF sweatshirt, has appeared to shake his hand. So I think everything is well on cameras, in PR. I wanted to add these little strokes.
After Z, he's the top. There's Z and then Orlando. So good for Zelensky getting that one.
So, Ben, you sent us along a wonderful litany of what's happening in the currency markets as the world currency moves away from the petrodollar. Want to touch upon some of that?
I can go down the list, but first I want to sort of frame it. For me, this is like a Yalta conference moment, where who was it? Roosevelt, Stalin, and Churchill met. And the war was still raging. Germany thought it had a chance, but there, the three leaders, the big three, already discussed what's going to come next, what's after the war. And that's what it feels like, because we've been talking about de-dollarization, a multipolar world, for at least a year. De-dollarization, by the way, goes back to 2014. They already had discussions with China, but people said it's slow. It's slow to come. It's going to be a lot of work, BRICS and all that. And like today, this week, it's just happening. One player after the other is joining the new world order. How are we going to function after this, after the demise of the US? What are things going to look like? The latest, which is right at today's news, is Iraq is hosting Saudi Iranian ambassadors in Baghdad today. They're basically joining the fray of this union. Saudi Arabia is officially joining SCO as, I think, an observer, which is the first step to becoming a fully recognized member. Another 5 countries are on their way. Iran might be, Iran is in BRICS Plus, also in SCO. China and France completed their first LNG trade in yuan. That never happened. The petrodollar since 1972, please correct me, that was the basis for value for the US currency, and their bloated debt to be paid by everyone else is basically dead. The Saudis are building something like an 80 billion Chinese yuan refinery. Turkey, Syria, and Iran are having a summit basically on Monday in Moscow. The Asian finance ministers in Indonesia meet to reduce the USD, the euro, the yen, and the British pound. It's all happening at breakneck pace. This is all this week. None of this is. Then there's the commodities. Mexico, AMLO, President Manuel Obrador. Yes, he's nationalized lithium, and he's talking about a lithium OPEC between the lithium-rich countries. Now, who's that for and who's that against? Obviously against who they've traditionally been exploiting that mineral, which is the US. Like Africa, South America, all of Asia, not Eurasia, because they cut off, Russia from Europe. So all of Asia is just going one way. And even reflexive allies are not joining this US mania, which is getting, the rules-based order is getting viler, more controlling. It doesn't offer anything but lectures and threats. And it's beginning not to work. I mean, there was one new country who recognized the CPC, the Communist Party of China, the People's Republic of China, and severed ties with the Republic of China, which is the province of Taiwan. Even though Tsai Ing-wen was in New York, and I really enjoyed Caleb Maupin and other people protesting against it. It's just,
get out of our country.
They can't say this on television, US and basic military people, that we're losing control in the Middle East.
That was Honduras, right?
Honduras, yes. We're losing control in the Middle East, will probably be out. We've lost Ukraine. We have lost control of South America. We've lost control of Africa. Also, Europe has lost control. You can't say this on television because you can't. But these are the realities that in just a week, like mushroomed in quantity.
The idea that the Western news media is interested in informing the American public that their government just lost all these countries. I mean, that's the biggest news. And there's not a peep about it in any of the Western press. It's like they just can't be honest with the American people about what's going on. But we can. So, we were trying to have Jay THARAPPEL on the program. We were going to talk about, the declining Western empire, because that's exactly what's going on. And the currency, the demise of the U.S. Global, the dollar as being the global currency, that's what is really ticking off this this decline and speeding it up. We just talked about how, it's Saudi Arabia, France and China, and all these countries.
Isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
It's not the axis of evil, which is Russia, China, Iran, but even Western countries are joining this.
Yeah, I'm not sure what to make of it. Maybe they're getting back for getting screwed over those subs with Australia. I mean, who knows?
I think
Meanwhile, the banks in the West, including Europe now, are melting, being injected with US dollars, including French and German banks now. You know, and the Fed has basically closed off operating at a loss for the first time in history. These are very serious things we've never, ever seen.
Yeah.
I find it amazing.
I want to back up to Honduras just for a moment and South America, because when the U.S. staged the coup in 2009 that threw out Manuel Zelaya, who is not a communist by any stretch of the imagination, that kind of thing it's the same sort of thing that happened in Bolivia, and the Bolivians overturned it. It's essentially what's happening in Brazil because Lula's back in power, whatever you may think of him. And in an odd way, it's happened in Colombia, and Mexico too. It's just that these countries are just sick and tired of the U.S. bullying them. It's just and if they know now they know at the heart of the matter is these currency exchanges. And if you can get out from under the petrodollar, Saudi Arabia has led the way here in a very profound sense. That we can bring down the gringo finally. They're so sick and tired of it. People I know that I've known for years who from Central American politics and South American politics, they can feel it in the air. It's done. They're done. Argentina, they're done with being under the heel of the IMF. It's over. There's China and there's Russia. There's people we can deal with for commodities. There's people we can deal with for development. Military security, AFRICOM shit never comes. Alliance for Progress, militarizing the police like the U.S. insists on doing doesn't come into play. It's just development. It's just people being able to feed themselves and live decent lives, and they're through with America. And if you set foot in their country, they're going to call you out. Now, I'm not saying the CIA still can't do its coup thing, and it does every once in a while. But the overall attitude,
Georgia,
I can see Georgia. I can see a huge shift going on.
Yeah, I
mean, who wrote? Was it Zbigniew Brzezinski who wrote The Grand Chessboard? And his worst nightmare was being shared, not like people uniting against the US, not on shared ideology, but on shared grievances. Because, come on, look at Saudi Arabia and Iran. They have hated each other historically. There are no two more different countries in the world. And they said, because China set us down, we'll try to do win-win cooperation. What's best for us? For stability in the region, long-term stability and development. And okay, we're doing it. We might not love each other, but we'll try to get along. India and China might not love each other, but they're getting along. Turkey might have been an opportunistic player, but we're getting along. Sorry, I know we need to go to a break shortly, but
we'll take a brief break. We'll be right back with some more of today's headlines and this week's headlines.
Undoubtedly, Africa is the best tourism destination on Earth. The continent is blessed with the most conducive atmosphere. To feel and enjoy these blessings, join the most productive one-week tour of the continent organized by Daylight Africa every September 2nd to September 9th to see beyond the fallacies about Africa on the mainstream media. Contact us at daylightafrica@gmail.com or call 718. Undoubtedly, Africa is the best tourism destination on Earth. The continent is blessed with the most conducive atmosphere. To feel and enjoy these blessings.
Welcome back to the Foreign Policy Review. I'm Dustin Pickering, and we're discussing this week's headlines, the decline of the U.S. petrodollar. And if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do right now. We'd love to have you as a subscriber at Parrot TV or World Inkers Network or any of our other various news outlets. So let's get back into this discussion. I just wanted to throw out there was a headline, I believe it was in The Guardian, as well as and the Reuters in their cycle about China bailing out, like say Argentina, some of the the lender states. What do you guys think of this? What is your opinion of the possibility of like a collapse or the harming being done to the banks in China?
I mean, I think financially, economically speaking, China is very solid. I mean, they've got a manufacturing base, and their economy isn't phony and based on finance and fake money. Like it's based on reality. And just like Russia, has an economy based on actual existing natural resources. And so, the two economies of Russia and China are so symbiotic, like they really complement each other well, because what China lacks, Russia has. And then, as far as manufacturing, Russia does good manufacturing, but I mean, China, of course, is the world leader in manufacturing. So they really complement each other, and they're solid, and it's based on material things, not finance, speculation, bubbles, and things like that. So yeah, I mean, South America, Central America, those countries they're happy to get away from the IMF and the World Bank, and they're happy to go to, China that has way more reasonable and no strings attached kind of economic assistance and development. So of course they're going to go there. I was going to point out that with the Mexico and Honduras, the U.S. has a counterplay, right? The U.S. has its allies in the region, which are the narco terrorists. And so what do we hear going on in Mexico? Well, there's threats from, U.S. legislators to send the U.S. military into Mexico to,
and Haiti,
under the false pretense of, defeating the cartels that are a threat to American security. But of course, just like ISIS was our team, the cartels are on our side. And so it would be nothing more than a pretext. But yeah, they're going to, like you said, the West is going to resist the development and stability offered by China and Russia, and they're going to seek to create chaos and havoc and wreck any kind of development that these countries are going to do. And that's the game. And the question is the U.S. going to be successful in messing up all these societies, or can the anti-imperialist bloc, maintain stability and development in the face of Western attempts to mess up their program? So, I mean, unfortunately, that's the reality. And I mean, it's very simplistic. It's like black hats and white hats, but I mean, that's the reality.
That's precisely right. We can get there because this is explicit in today's or yesterday's Joe Biden's Summit for Democracy, which is basically a glorified Zoom call with the countries that are on board, where they signed something called, what is this? The Global Fragility Act. And it's very specifically outlined that we have to fight them now over there so that the conflict doesn't later come to us. And it's basically done by the military. It's Pentagon, it's CIA, it's USAID. These are the organizations that wrote this legislation. But before that, I wanted to return to the new development bank. I think that's the central bank of either the BRICS or SCO. What has happened and what spooked the USA is not just this. I mean, they were with China up until 2000, maybe the late 2000s. And then the negativity started. And that's why Xi Jinping came to power and he inked the Belt and Road Initiative, trillions to infrastructure around the world. What spooked them is what you're supposed to do in the rules-based order in the world is you can buy stuff with the US dollar and you have to grab the US dollar from the US, therefore propping up the economy of the United States, even if it's a casino sort of a circus economy. Right now, what's happening is China found the antidote. We're going to get from the exports, from the stuff we create, we get those US dollars, we put them into real shit, into Africa, into Eurasia, we put them into infrastructure, into real stuff. We can use that to weaken the USD, and it spooked them to a great extent. But even in the late, I'd say 2000s, early 2010s, they were too late to this. And in 2023, they are very much late for this. So what they are doing is just reacting. People say the Bidens and the Newlands and Kagans and Blinkens have a plan. They had a plan all along. They're playing 5D chess. No, they're making up as they go. I haven't seen anyone more incompetent. Like the perfect thing is the negative charisma. Kamala Harris is touring Africa, while Africa is just kicking France out, initiating business deals with China. They don't give a fuck. The old tools are beginning not to work because China has found the antidote. So there's an alternative in the world. If you need grain, if you need fertilizers, if you need uranium, you don't have to go to the USD. very dangerous moment. There's no telling what they can do, but it's a dangerous moment, and that's what this farce of the Summit for Democracy, Joe Biden's little Zoom meeting, was a perfect demonstration of.
Yeah, I wouldn't trust the Guardian editorial staff if, as far as I could throw all of them at once.
They're in another world. Yeah,
They're just full of shit. But the fact of the matter is that the Chinese are very smart in going in and retiring all the IMF debt, because ultimately that will have big paybacks for them. You know, that $240 billion investment, even if it's remotely true, and I don't necessarily believe that it is, that'll pay back. That'll be tenfold, 12-fold, because they'll have developmental opportunities in those countries that will pay dividends. And the other thing is, I can't remember the country, but China built a port, a deep water port in that country, and that country defaulted on the loan. And the Western press presented that as though a terrible thing, and that China had then basically done what the IMF does, and that is seize all the assets and ruin all the social programs in the country and all that stuff. But they didn't. That's not what they did at all. They signed a 99-year lease on that port to try to give it a chance to become economically relevant, because it wasn't getting the business they had anticipated. So that's a whole new approach to a failure, in essence. And business deals are going to fail. I was a businessman all my life, and sometimes you get it wrong. But overall, the Chinese seem to be getting it overwhelmingly right. So,
very true. I mean, he's a lukewarm social democrat at best, but Yanis Varoufakis had a little stand-up skit about how China negotiates these deals, especially in Africa, which is why they're favored, because 20 African countries just got forgiven their debt. So it's not debt-trap diplomacy, not by a long shot. But I think a Greek port did the same, and they said, oh, this is unfair, this is unfair, this is unfair, so we want this, and they went really angry, and China said, what are your, okay, these are the points, okay, done, let's sign a new contract.
I've shared that skit, you called it, many times.
It's a short lecture.
It's a good illustration of the difference of approach, you know. So yeah, China is really, you know, groundbreaking, and they're offering the world an alternative, a far better alternative than the strings attached. You know, we're going to control every aspect of your economy, and you're going to do exactly what you want. You're going to cut social safety nets. You're going to privatize your industries. You're going to downsize your government, and you're going to open up your markets and your labor to our Western corporate, you know, exploitation. I mean, that's the playbook of the West, and China does none of those things. They're just like, hey, you want to borrow some money? Well, is this enough? Are these terms okay? Okay, let's do it. I mean, it's very, very, and it's not just borrowing money. It's, hey, you want us to build you roads, bridges, schools, hospitals, ports, airports, and they're really good at it. China's really good at it because they've done it in their country, and they're going to be happy to do it in all of the developing world. But again, that's a big threat to the U.S. because they've got this really sweet system where they just, you know, they have this empire, and they just extract all this wealth from these places, and they have no interest in seeing it being developed and seeing sovereignty come to these countries. They oppose that. They oppose that violently. And I mean, so that's what's going on for sure.
And it's threat free, because, you know, in the US, if you don't do it, you get color revolution, you get a different system, a different.
You need some freedom. We're going to bring you some freedom bombs real quick.
And China says you could be a Saudi monarchy, you could be a democracy, and we don't care. This is what's in your interest. This is what's our interest. We are not exporting our system.
And it's easy to comprehend, because if you retire an IMF loan, and you're retiring all the interest you have to pay on that IMF loan. So you've created a groundwork for real development, for true development. And it's a win-win for all of these countries as far as they can see. And as far as I can see, it's been developmentally extraordinary. I mean, Li Camp has come back from China. He's absolutely over the moon with what they've done.
I've only seen videos, but it's just amazing what I've seen. Just the island of Hainan, just these mega cities. I would love to see it in real life. People tell me that, You judge a city by getting, out of the airport and into the city, and there's no big taxi queue. You get into a high-speed train in the heart of the city in 20 minutes. That's amazing to me.
Yeah.
Thank you, Joe. Meanwhile, by the way,
I didn't realize. Go ahead.
I wanted to say that ever since the 996 red ballons, the Luftballon incident, China is not picking up the phone. China has not picked up the phone for Joe Biden. They have not approved other high-level talks with, I think, Blinken. They have not approved visits. And Europe is in an absolute panic. They're sending Ursula von der Leyen, the liar, the wicked witch, as well as, I think, the Spanish prime minister to China. And even that hasn't been approved or signed back by the Chinese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, because they already killed Germans' basically cheap energy and Europe's cheap energy by blowing up Nord Stream. That's gone. If they also take away China's markets, then Europe is well and truly dead. And they know it, industrially, economically. So I just love to see this panic that they've become irrelevant. And sooner or later, there has to be a decision in Europe. Do we go with the US or the new bloc and survive?
Mm-hmm.
It seems the West really wants them to, just sacrifice all the way and, not only cut off themselves from Russian energy, but from Chinese manufacturing as well. And the Chinese market, to exporting goods to the Chinese market. And I think Europe sees that and they're like, there's a little bit of tension there because they definitely want to support the U.S., but they don't want to kill themselves to do it. But that's what they're being asked to do. So how does that play out? That's going to be, enjoyable to watch. Not so much if you live in Europe. Sorry, Ben.
Yeah, I feel exactly the same. I wish we were a little bit more to the east in our orientation, but we're not. While fighting fucking Brussels. Sorry, but there goes our monetization. But it's surreal to see people like Scholz and Ursula and Habeck and these people. And who's the 360 girl? The Putin has to go 360 degrees to.
Yeah.
They are just completely Atlanticists and doing everything that Washington says. Meanwhile, there are smaller countries who said, we're out. Czechia said we don't have any ammunition to send. Bulgaria was the other one to join Hungary, and Serbia, which is not EU, to not send this 1 million rounds of ammunition to Ukraine. A lot of realism is setting in, not so much to the east, the Baltic midgets and Poland, they are mad. They are boycotting basically the Olympics because Russians are going to play. That's the new Polish mania. But the south of Europe, all Yugoslavia, Hungary, Bulgaria, these places are beginning to sober up. And that's what Putin or Lavrov said, that we will do deals or discussions with the West, but they need to come to their senses. And I don't see the fault in that.
Dustin, you brought up the Guardian article, started all this flame throwing here. What did you think of the article?
I don't know. I mostly caught. I don't know if it was just the Guardian. I think it was the Reuters article that I read. Caught at the end where it says, as an expert, for the Western world on the side of the Western world, said that multipolarity was inevitable, was one of the ending points of the article. I don't think it was I think that was the Reuters reporting on that one, but I don't know if the Guardian
sounds more like Reuters.
Yeah. I think it was. I'm pretty sure it was. I read the Guardian article. I don't remember seeing that particular point, but they were quoting somebody, somebody from the IMF, I think. I thought that was especially interesting that we're getting some headway on some admission there.
Yeah.
Yes.
Some reality.
Yes. A lot of admissions this week.
Yeah.
Just one more subject on the Europe. You probably know the UN vote, where apparently there's 3 countries in the world who want to know who blew up Nord Stream, and that's it. It's Brazil, China, and Russia, and about 13 countries abstained. Nobody voted no. I mean, if that's not telling, I don't know what is. Nabenzia, Russia's ambassador to the UN, said, "Yeah, this vote tells us everything we want to know.
Yeah.
We don't want to bring up this subject anymore. We're done."
What a joke! What a joke!
What?
Nobody cares about who did it. That's hilarious. I mean,
yeah, well, everybody knows who did it.
Right.
Everybody does. That's the surreal realism, isn't it? Thank you, Joe. Annalena Baerbock is the 360 girl. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Dustin, so what do you think? I mean, do you agree that with the inevitability of multipolarity? I mean, it seems like we've been saying that for years, and you know, and the West is just increasing the time frame in which that's happening with their attempts to keep it from happening. So you know, they overthrow the government in Ukraine. They get that government to provoke Russia into this military operation. They think that's going to allow us to maintain our hegemony, but it's doing the opposite. It pushed them closer to China. And it, you know, who saw Saudi Arabia jumping ship? I mean, you know, all kinds of things, you know, are accelerating the end of unipolar hegemony. I mean,
It's only been 2 years of a Joe Biden presidency. I mean, I was one of the
He's
people
going
who
to end
said
up looking like the most incompetent president in 50, 60 years.
Did you see him walk out after the mass shooting in Nashville and say, "Hi, I'm Jill Biden's husband, and I like chocolate chip ice cream"?
And those beautiful kids in the back. Those beautiful kids in the back was the next sentence. What was that? That weird. I think it was Fox News where we supposed to.
I mean, it's such a it's a joke. It's a joke that people want to pretend that he's the leader of the free world. Like, it's amazing.
As I said, one of the people who knew that he was going to be worse than Trump was me, even though I hate Trump. He's like someone who plays a president in a porno.
Easy, Ben. This is touchy territory.
Okay, but only 2 years. The USD is destroyed. Ukraine is destroyed. Europe and America has been completely demilitarized. I think London said if we want to go to Russia, we kind of need a 10-year little warning from Putin. And I think there was a similar number, 8 or 7 years in the USA to rebuild stocks of weapons that we've already said. They're out. This is just 2 years. Also, like completely lost legitimacy in the world, in the eyes of most of the world. 3/4, 87% of the world didn't go along with sanctions and condemning Russia. Even at the democracy, even at the democracy summit, he couldn't get a little paragraph in there to condemn Russia. That's what's happened in 2 years.
Excuse me, Dan. I'm a glutton for punishment. I listened to Trump's speech in Waco, and it's in its entirety at 3 a.m. And he claimed he took credit for sending arms to Ukraine when he was
and
president.
said it was a mistake.
Well, I mean, political hindsight is worth, you know.
Yeah.
I can. It's
2020.
My spitting on the screen. He's just basically saying that because it's going to get him votes. He can have it both ways. He can be I'm strong militarily, but at the same time, that was a mistake I made because I know that's the way the people who want to vote for me are going to go. If Biden has started this war and in Ukraine, and I can garner votes with my people because they hate Biden. That's all.
Which is nonsense because Obama started this war in 2014. And
right. Yeah. So yeah. Right. But they don't go back that far. You could go to a MAGA crowd and they don't know about the Maidan. They don't know what the fuck you're talking about. This comedian Jordan Klepper, he goes to them and he asks them about January 6th, and people don't even know it happened. They don't know what he's talking about. So we can't, you know, these people. I'm sorry, Ben, you're in Hungary, and I have like this.
I defer to you on American issues.
The rest of the world are smarter than Americans because I'm around Americans all day long, and I have to deal with these assholes, and they are tremendously stupid people. Tremendously stupid people. They can't find Ukraine on a map during the Vietnam War.
Anybody that falls for Trump's shtick, I mean, can't be too bright.
They couldn't find Vietnam on a map. Yeah.
Love you, Carlo, and defer to you on all things American. But as an
I want to say there's we have two kinds of presidents. We have this Odyssean modern man who's full of guile and lies and does it really well. Nixon, Obama, Clinton. And then you have pure idiots, pure frontmen, pure puppets Truman, Reagan, the Bushes, both Bushes, and Trump. You have just fools to the core, and that's the two kinds of people they run, and they build their elections around. You get somebody articulate like Obama that can lie to your face and without blinking, and
I fell for it
gold.
like millions of people. I fell for the Obama PR campaign.
But if they don't, anyway, that's the long and the short of it. So you've only had two types of presidents since FDR, and I remember what Texas journalist Molly Ivins said about George Bush Senior. If intelligence ever goes to $40 a barrel, I want the drilling rights on that man's brain, or something like that, or idiocy. You get the drift of it. These people are just, to talk about a president as being, Billy Bob is right, as being truly influential, especially when they're an idiot, is futile. I'm babbling now, but I'm sorry.
Yes, but name me one leader who'd switched places with Xi Jinping. Name me one. Do you remember this? This was angry Joe Biden during the what is it called? The big speech, the annual State of the Union. State of the Union. You remember this? It was the one moment when he got visually angry and aggravated, like off script, because he hates that people respect China and they respect Vladimir Putin. He really hates that fact. Also, I want to say, because this isn't quite social media, but it's social because it's nature, is video. Emmanuel Macron is garbage. Okay, I want to say that live, because a French woman said that on social media and they arrested her. There's your democracy and human rights and values, EU values, while Paris is burning. I wanted to say that. So,
yeah, no, that's amazing. Again, the hypocrisy of Western democracies always casting aspersions at the authoritarians that they're trying to destroy.
Have you seen?
And yeah, you call the president garbage, and he is, and then you get arrested. Have
you seen the kind of violence the police are enacting on people in France? Have you seen the heaps
of
trash?
Right.
If that were China, it would be 24-hour
Oh
coverage.
My God!
Autocracy.
They're killing their own people. We got to support the democracy in China, and that evil regime's killing their own people. I mean, why don't they do that with France? And they might, if Macron continues to, they might turn on him. So
I mean, King Charles could. I still sometimes say Queen Charles because I'm so used to Elizabeth, but he wanted to visit Paris, and Emmanuel Macron had to cancel because it would have been a let them eat cake moment when he would have been in the Versailles Palace. It would have been dangerous for a king to be in France during such times. Those are the times we are living through. Like, it's insane. You live in interesting times.
I support the French people and their protest for democracy. I mean,
France.
Macron is just trying to arbitrarily raise the retirement age by a couple years or something.
Just a couple of years, yeah, that's enough for France.
It's probably during a time where life expectancy is actually going down. Because I know life expectancy has gone down in the U.S. I imagine it's gone down in France. So how is life expectancy going to go down, and then you're going to raise the retirement age? You're just squeezing people.
It is. That is exactly what it is. Yeah. U.S. is below Cuba, so that must be something hard to stomach.
We've lost like 2 years of life expectancy in the past. Even before COVID, it was heading down, and it's continued to go down in the U.S.
Yeah.
Not in China though.
No,
pro-lifers will think of that.
Every social metric is going up in China, including happiness, and satisfaction with government. People don't grasp this. That we're a democracy. China has to be either brainwashed or stupid or kept under surveillance or horrible. They're perfectly content and happy with their government, and increasingly getting annoyed at the US with very, very good reason. Unified around the party, which has 95 million members. Okay, mostly engineers, teachers. Come on, these people plan for millennia, for 100 years, not for the cycle of, the next.
We could learn so much. I mean, humanity can learn so much.
So I think that they won't turn, the U.S. won't turn on Macron unless some of the elements in France buy more liquid natural gas from Russia. I think that would turn them. All the wrong reasons.
That's a good way to put it.
We've seen so many times before.
Oh, don't forget, they were materially hurt by the AUKUS deal as well, because they had an existing treaty with the US, so they could build subs, and it was axed. So they are plenty upset with the US, but not Macron. Macron is their creation. He's an Atlanticist through and through. He's a little.
They'd have to have a better alternative, or they just, they put some snipers and shoot both sides. They do that too.
Yeah.
Just to wreak havoc and destabilize.
Yeah, the Washington Post. I don't usually read it, but they had an article that we have to double down on Nicaragua. It's a country of 6.5 million people. We have to go after them again. We have to go after them hard, because as though 2018 wasn't bad enough, with people murdered in the streets by gangs of thugs hired by the Central Intelligence Agency. Oh my God, what a country!
That's interesting. I mean, I wonder why, what their arguments are for that. I know Ben Norton, of course, is down there. Ben Norton does a great job.
Yeah, I think they want to go after Ben and haul him out, like a Noriega thing, I
want to mention, Max Perry was on our show a while ago, talking about his upcoming article on Alexander Dugin, which is finished now, and you can read it at uns.com. I posted about it last night, and a lot of people were very interested. But Max Perry does take Ben Norton to task a little bit for his.
So do I.
Yeah, no, I think there's some legitimate grievances against Ben. I like Ben, and I don't want to call him.
I like Ben and respect a lot of his work, but the Dario Dugina case was a watershed moment for me.
No, Max really took him to task. You should read his 6,000 word article. It's at uns.com. It's a really great article. And he does get anyway. So we'll leave it at that. But so he came on our show before the article was done, and it just posted a couple days ago. So and that I just was reminded of that because of you mentioned Nicaragua, but yeah, Nicaragua's doing great things. I mean, it was the Contras against the Sandinistas. The U.S. was funding the Contras. We were selling arms to Iraq and Iran in order to generate revenue to build up a Contra war machine, essentially, which we unleashed against the normal people of Nicaragua. But ultimately, once that war ended, the leader of the Sandinistas, Ortega, won a democratic election, and he's really been in power ever since. And he's done a lot of amazing things for the country. And they're totally in the anti-imperialist bloc, and that's why there's so much venom by the empire against them.
Yeah, the Chamorros were in power for a brief period of time.
True,
they absolutely ruined the economy. But look, Nicaragua. The United States invaded Nicaragua with Marines 14 times. Wow. In the early part of the 20th century. The United States was behind the assassination of Augusto Sandino, who's the namesake of the Sandinistas. They did this on behest of the United Fruit, like they did in Guatemala later. They did this at the behest of U.S. corporations. Yeah. That's why you have Smedley Butler going around going, "War is a racket. I was a gangster for capitalism." That's what Smedley Butler said in the halls of Congress, and that's been going on for so many decades, and this it's just this vile notion that the coup that the U.S. attempted in Nicaragua in 2018 was one of the most violent and vile coups you could imagine. They were hiring murderers. The Central Intelligence was hiring murderers to string piano wire across roads, so when people rode by on their motorbikes, it would cut their heads off. That's how disgusting U.S. foreign policy is. It's disgusting.
People are beginning to know this. They have their grievances in the past, and I want to end. We have one minute left. In a ray of sunshine, while Zelensky is demanding basically Western energy companies for war profits, which should come to Ukraine, he's begging more money. Stalingrad, which 20 years before I was born was called Stalingrad and renamed under the criminal Khrushchev to Volgograd, has an active survey right now. I've waited 40 years for it, 42. An active survey of the population to be renamed to Stalingrad once more. There is ray in the hope. China is rising. Russia has risen. It's woken up from its slumber, and it gives me hope globally. Even here in Hungary, stuck between the two blocks.
And that's the last word. And it was great.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks for watching the Foreign Policy Review, and be back next Thursday, 11 a.m. Central Standard Time with some more commentary. And please subscribe to our channel. And if you would like, leave us some comments during the show as well as after the show. If you're watching, following the show, you're just coming in late, leave us some comments on what you think while the show's going on, while you're watching. So thank you for watching the Foreign Policy Review. Have a great day. Do some reading and research of your own. Wish you well. Do you know that there is a publishing company that wants to make life easier for you as a writer? This publishing company is called World Inkers Printing and Publishing. We publish in all different languages, and we're looking for writers of all genres, all formats. We're looking for scholars, ghostwriters, playwrights, poets, short fiction, novelists, you name it. We're looking for anybody who is interested in writing and the craft of writing to be in touch with us. You can reach us at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. With World Inkers Printing and Publishing, you do not require a lot of money to publish with us. Contact us today at info.worldinkers@gmail.com. Become a winner with other authors at World Inkers